Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and I want to show you how you can easily install the amazing carbon fiber cold air intake system from Armaspeed into your BMW M3 or M4 or M2C. All right, y'all, so before we jump into the work, let's talk about it here a little bit. Yeah, there are a ton of choices on changes you can make to your air intake system in your S55 motor platform, right? So that's gonna be your BMW M2C like I have, M3 or M4. But one of the coolest choices you can make is the carbon fiber cold air intake system from Armaspeed. I mean, this is just gorgeous. As far as carbon fiber goes, this is just amazing, high quality work. And not only is it gonna change my air intake system, but it's gonna reduce a little bit of weight. And candidly, it's gonna look absolutely fantastic with the hood up. So I wanna walk you through this whole process. This is something you can easily do with a few simple tools, and it's not all that hard. And I wanna show you how you can do this too and install this into your car. So let's go ahead and jump straight in and let's get started. All right, so as always, everything you need for part descriptions, part links, and tools you're gonna need are always in the video description. So as we walk through this, if you have any questions, including torque values, make sure to check the video description. Okay, so we're gonna need it to take our carbon fiber strut bar off. To do so, we've got to pull these two plastic covers at the top. You've got 1, 2, 3, 10mm quarter turn nuts. They're just little locking levers that hold that plastic in place. In addition, at the end of both, you have those little plastic rivets where you're going to pull up the center. You can use a screwdriver, a plastic trim tool, a pair of pliers if you have to. And then you can pull that rivet out, and then those will come out, and then those will come off completely. Take them and set them safely aside. Now, our carbon strut bar is held down by 13mm bolts, 2 at each end and 2 here in the front. Now, make sure that when you put this back, that you put them back in the right order. The long ones go in the back, the short ones go in the front. The one other caution is when you pull your cover on this side, your positive battery post over here is going to be exposed. I usually will cover it with a glove or something similar because the end of your strut bar is metal. You wouldn't want to touch it, that would be bad. Okay, so take all of that off, take your strut bar off, set it all safely aside, and then we're going to look to take the intake boxes themselves out. There's a 10mm bolt right here as well that I always forget holding the strut bar to the reservoir, so make sure to pull that as well. Don't drop it, it's a bit of a hassle. So pull that out carefully, then this whole thing is out and free. Take your strut bar and set it safely aside. All right, so as you can tell, all of that's out. Now, the next steps are really quite simple, so I'm just gonna show you on both. You've got MAF sensors on both, so you just, on both intakes, so you just depress the little tab and go ahead and pull the cable out. And you can do that on both sides. They can be a little bit stiff if they've never been off before. And always be really careful with those plugs. Okay, you also have this coolant line that runs down your front intake here. You just pull them up and out of the clips really easily. And then what you're gonna have is you're going to have a hose clamp on each side. So one here, one here. You can just use a screwdriver. Usually these are like 8mm sockets if you wanna use a socket. But then all you have to do is just loosen the hose clamp on both sides. It's these hose clamps and a couple of rubber pegs that really just kind of keep your intakes in place. So once this hose clamp is nice and loose, which this front one is. Now, one of the other differences here with the front one, there's a little clip right here in front. You just suppress these two little clips, and then this little arm will come off. Now, also on this side, you have a vacuum hose here. As you can see right here, there's a little collar around it. You want to depress that collar and then push back gently. And again, be careful as you do all this. You wouldn't want to break any of your collars or anything similar, okay? So now that all that is off, this is pretty much loose. This end sits down into rubber grommets on this side. So what you want to do is just pick it up and it'll pop out of those grommets. Don't apply too much pressure here as you deal with this other end as it comes out of your intake down to your turbo, right? So there we go. And as you can see, it's up and out. Okay, so now that that is off, we're gonna wanna do the same to this side. Now, I haven't loosened the hose clamp here yet, but you loosen the hose clamp and then just simply gently lift up and out. Now, with the neck on the pipe on this side, I just wanna say be extra careful. The neck that goes down into your air intake down here down below sits on a 10mm post and a little grommet right here in the back. That's hard to show, so I'll just talk you through it. I broke that once by pulling up too sharply and pressing too hard on the back of this. So when this comes off, just be careful as you take it off. So just lift very gently, take this accordion section of this pipe, press it back to get as much room as possible to get that out without any issues, okay? So go ahead and get all of that out, and then we'll move on to next steps. All right, so a couple of things. So first of all, back here for your intake pipe, you're gonna wanna take this 10mm bolt out right here, so you can take this pipe out. Now, keep in mind, I've got the heat wrap on mine right now, so yours may look a little different, or will look different if it's just the OEM. Okay, so disregard that one difference there. Okay, so now once you take your heat pipe out, you can take your shield and start to fit this in. And this is where the shield really makes a huge difference. Now, I'm gonna call out a couple of differences between a stock car and what I've got going on in my car being a little bit different. Okay, but a couple of things. So first of all, take your intake pipe out. It just pressure fits down into the fresh air intake down below. That 10mm bolt comes out, and then you can just take it out. Gives you more room to work. Now, the shield, there's two, one for each side, and it's easy to tell which one is here on the passenger side because it's the one with the slot in it right here. Now, if you're looking at this video for an M2 or an M3 or an M4, you're gonna have a little bit more space to work with. Now, if you've got an M3 or an M4, you've got more space in here, you've got more space down between the motor and the shield a little bit, but it all still fits. The M2 is just a little bit tighter, which is why taking that pipe out was a little bit better. Now, also right here, I've got an oil catch can that I'm going to speak to a little bit. Now, if you don't have one of those, you can just disregard and you're going to be fine. But, so, you can see this orientation that the shield goes into. This notch goes here on the motor side, this flare comes up to the other side, and there's a post on the back of this that fits into the grommet where your air box used to fit. Now, also down below, right down here, you've got your existing air tube that comes in. So you take the shield, you fit it down in and under your air intake. So this is shielding off the motor side and all the heat that's coming off the motor. You then slide it forward, get this grommet up into place. Now, the other thing that I found I had to do is right here, you've got a big wiring harness that's coming up off of your radiator fan and all of your thermostat and other radiator components. There's a notch here in the frame. It's impossible to show. But this wiring harness was on a little plastic post. So I pushed it off that post and I pulled the wiring harness up into a little bit of a notch of this bracket right here underneath to give me a little bit more room. That allows the front lip of this to fit up and in. So now it's all fit up into place. This post is in place. It's underneath your air duct here as well, and all good to go there. Now, I have a little bit of a fitment problem because I have an oil catch can. Normally, and I have the awesome Mishimoto oil catch can that sits right here. And as you can tell with the mounting bracket, that's going to be in the way. That's not going to work. So if you followed my other video with the Mishimoto catch can, or you have something similar, you're going to have to do a little bit of custom configuration to make this work. What I did in my case is that I actually took off the mounting bracket and I've pulled the can forward and pushed it down. And it'll still sit. It's still sitting in an upright position and it's pushed down out of the way. And that gives this enough space to flex into space for this top cover to go into space. Okay, so this will get that heat shield all into place and ready to go. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take our air box on this side, transfer off the MAF sensor and put it into the new one, including the new air filter. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, so here's the air box for this side and your MAF sensor. These can be very delicate, so be very, very careful. So this is a T20, so just use a T20 Torx bit to take both these bolts out and take your MAF sensor out, transfer it to the new tube that's going to go here, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. They provide new bolts to put it into place. So go ahead and transfer your MAF sensor. If you want, you could also transfer the MAF on the other side as well. All right, so one thing we want to stress as we do this here, kind of orientation of the MAF sensor itself. Now, when you pull this out, you'll notice that it's shaped, and actually the original has a shaped key to this, so it can only go in one way. But the new one does not. It does not have that key to it. So what you want to make sure you do, you can see the opening, when you pull the MAF out, that you install it directly into the exact same orientation, okay? So in this case, it's the back of the wedge to the opening side, the triangular point towards the air filter, right? But just make sure that when you transfer this, you transfer both of them in the correct orientation, or you could potentially give yourself some trouble. Okay, so then go ahead and then just bolt and then secure it down into place. These should be snug. Don't crank down on it too hard, but it should work just fine. All right, y'all, almost done on this side, so make sure that the shield is all tucked in really nicely. The post is fit into the grommet. Now, the other thing you're going to want to do if you haven't taken them out already, you've got two little screws that go into these holes here and here. Go ahead and take them out now, because when you put the cover on, the cover is going to fit over the top of these, and the screws are going to go through. Same thing on this side. There's a screw in the cover itself that's going to go through this hole in the frame right here. Now, the other thing we're going to want to do is that a bit of a protective rubber has been provided as well. I find that this works really well if you spread it with your fingers and put it down this exposed edge. And there's two of these. There's a shorter one and a longer one. Here on the passenger side is the shorter one. And I'm just spreading it with my fingers to get it to go around that metal frame right there, just like that. Okay, so that will help protect the carbon fiber of that cover and not get scraped up when you put it on, which will be really nice, and also keep it from rattling or rubbing or do anything bad. Okay, so now that you have that all done and you have your new air intake, now the other thing I've done is I've gone ahead and put the air filter on. Now, one thing that they do suggest when you look at the information from Armaspeed is you can see where the seal of the carbon fiber is right here. Don't put the worm drive right where the actual connection seals. Okay, so put it up here at the top. As you can see, my MAF filter's in, and while it's not keyed like the other one, like I mentioned a second ago, it really only goes in one way because of the alignment of the bolts. But just to make sure, and this is a 2mm Allen on both of these, so very, very small. Okay, so you're going to take your hose clamp, go ahead and put it back on the original intake, fit this up into place, fit it in, and then tighten down your hose clamp and reconnect your MAF. And then I'll show you what it looks like once that's done, and we're going to put the cover on. All right, so you can see the air filter's on, the MAF sensor is reconnected. I just made sure that this had a really good snug connection, so I fit the pipe back in firmly, and then snug down the hose clamp. Now, and again, don't crank on it too much. It just needs to have a seal, that's all. So at this point, you can just take and start to fit your cover back into place. And again, it's going to go over the top of this edge because you've got your little holes, as I'm in the shadows, here and here, that are going to go through. And then you've got another right here. So go ahead and just take this, fit it down into place. Make sure that you don't bunch up any of this, your rubber gasket here to make sure that you've got extra protection here. But then get this all set into place, and then let's bounce over and finish the other side. All right, y'all, so really quickly before I move over and work on the other side, as you can see, it's all done. I've got that rubber grommet all the way around. I went ahead and made a slight gap right here to make it easier to get that screw in, and no doubt later to get it out. So I just cut the grommet and moved it up a little bit. So all the bolts are in and all the way around. You can see it's secure. It looks really, really good. So let's go and jump over to the driver's side and get that done. All right, so here we are on the driver's side. So there's a couple of things we're going to want to look at. So here's the shield for this side. You can see the orientation. The wall of this goes against the motor side. So there's a couple of things here. There's a post right here that's going to fit down into the grommet. You can see all the way down there at the bottom. But in addition, there's a bracket right here, an OEM bracket that holds this piece coming up with an 8mm bolt in the top. This is going to go onto that same bracket with that 8mm bolt through right there. So I would go ahead and take these screws out first so you can make it easy. It'll be easier to put them back on in a few minutes. And these are those 2.5mm Allens here and here, okay? So then we can fit this down, all the way down in, slide it down under and into place. Same thing as before. This bottom lip, you want to get under the air duct that's coming through. You can see the end of the air duct right here. So this is going to come down and slide into place, and will fit right there in that bracket. So let me pull that 8mm bolt, and then we'll work it down into place. We'll secure it, and this side will go quickly. All right, so your main intake pipe, and the best looking of them all. So I've already transferred my MAF sensor in the correct orientation, and like I said, just tighten these down snug with that 2mm Allen. It really only goes in one way because of the way the bolts fit, but you can also see there's a little arrow as well showing which way the air should flow. But just make sure it's in and straight and you don't have any leaks there. You don't want to cause any problems by doing this work, okay? So then you're going to fit it back here underneath all of this and fit it down under this hose and fit it into the intake, the OEM intake pipe over on this side. And this will take a little bit of doing to get it to all fit into place and snug in really, really nicely, okay? So go ahead and get that all snug in and make sure that it fits and is seated well over on this side. And then we're going to look to put the cover on next. All right, so the pipe is in, as you can see, and man, that looks good. Make sure that your coolant hose coming off your intercooler is not trapped down below. You'll want to take that vacuum hose and go ahead and just push that back into place, and it should get a good click. And if you pull back on it, it shouldn't come off. So make sure that it's on and on snugly. Okay, so when I pull back on this, it doesn't come off anymore. Go ahead and take your MAF sensor, plug that in as well, just like that. So double check all your connections. My MAF is on, my vacuum hose is on, my connection here is good and solid. And then my coolant hose here is up above as well. All right, so let's move over, take a look at putting the cover on. All right, so with the intake pipe secure, there's really only a couple of things left to do. We can fit the cover on and we're almost done. So in the kit are a couple of zip ties. You've got a little bracket right here that your coolant hose will rest on. It has a couple of holes in it. Just zip tie it down so it doesn't go anywhere. Then the other thing you want to do is you want to take more of this rubber bumper and work it around the edge of the frame right here so your carbon fiber cover doesn't get all scratched up. So just spread it open with your fingers, work it all the way up and around this, and then we'll fit the cover into place. Make sure that you took the two bolts out here and here so we can fit the cover in, and then just feed those two bolts back in with the cover in place, and they're all good to go. So, all right, so now that the zip ties are on and we have this rubber guard on, all good to go. You can just go ahead and fit this back into place. And what I find really is the easiest way to do this is to do this lead edge first and then slide it down. So just take it, fit it around the pipe, get it to set in and set down past this reservoir right here as well, just like that. And if you move any of your rubber guard around, just make sure that it seals well and sits down well, just like that. All right, y'all. So as you can see, the cover's on. It looks really good. It's gonna last check before we put the strut bar back on. As you can see, I was able to tuck my catch can down low and out of the way, which is nice. And again, if you don't have one of those, you don't have that concern, but it is nice that you can still run both. Fits in really, really good. Looks really good. Just from looks alone, I'm impressed, but super light, should add some performance and should change the way it sounds just a little bit, but all in all, really impressive. So, all right, so putting the strut bar on is just a reverse of what we were doing before. So slide it in through the far side, set it down, put the two long ones on each end, put the short ones in the front, and put your 10 millimeter right there for the reservoir. And again, be really careful. As you can see, I've got my positive battery post covered by a glove right at the moment, but really simple. So go ahead and put that back on, and then we'll put the covers back on. All right, so go ahead and just put your plastic covers back on. There's little fingers here on the end. So make sure that they fit into the fingers in that centerpiece, and then just slide it down into place. You'll take your 10 millimeter and just quarter turn these. Mine are to the point where I can about turn them with my hand. Go ahead and take your plastic rivet and put your plastic rivet in here on the outside, right in the post right there. Okay, so go ahead and do both sides, and then we'll do a final walkthrough and make sure that everything's done. All right, but if you're looking at your kit and you're asking yourself, wait a minute, there's two more parts. So let's talk about them, because I'm not actually going to do them on this car, because if you look and see, I've got custom 3D printed air snorkels that I'm using here into my air boxes. So these air scoops that come with this kit, I'm actually not going to install. In addition, the M2 is a little bit different than the M3 and the M4. The M3 and the M4 have vents on either side of this air box area that goes back to your air ducts, and those vents are flat. So these would work perfectly to help guide air back into your air ducts. And in this particular case, I'm not going to do it, because I've done something entirely different. But I didn't want to forget and make sure that you have the instructions of how to do this as well. So if you look back here, you can see your crossbars, and you have them on both sides. So what you'd want to do is pull your gasket trim here across the top and loosen. There are T30 bolts all across the nose here for your nose piece. This is plastic trim, and that allows this to flex a little bit. So you can get your hands back here behind and reach down back and behind, and what you have is you have these ram scoops. Now, the ram scoop itself goes on the top, so the other one is inverted. It looks just like this, but the scoop would be on the top on that side. And you can see where there's a loop here on the back. You would unbolt that loop, put it around that, and it would sit like this, up above your crossbar right there, helping to guide air down and into your normally flat intake. So if you have an M3 or an M4, so F80 or F82, that's exactly what you're going to want to do. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. But like I said, pull the trim, pull the bolts, then you can lean your front nose back and then slide these in and loop them around your crossbars and snug them up nice and tight to help guide that air in. And these are really great pieces. I really like them, but I've already done something a little bit different in this car, and I'm not going to, it wouldn't be conducive for me to install these once I've made the changes for these 3D printed air scoops that go back and back in. Okay, but I didn't want to forget about that. So let's take a look at the rest of the install, make sure that we're done. All right, so let's go ahead and give it one last walkthrough here really quick, make sure everything is done. So our top plastic covers are on. Now, if you check the video description, you'll have the torque values for your bolts for your carbon fiber strut bar. So make sure to check that out. Okay, but those are on. My 10mm bolt here for the reservoir is on. Those are all torqued down. My covers are down with the bolts, of course, underneath, all tightened down nicely with that 2.5mm Allen. All of my hose clamps are good. My zip ties are good. Covers are on this side and the cover on that side. So all good to go. I am really impressed. This looks fantastic. And you know, this isn't all about appearance, but it doesn't hurt that it looks really good. Okay, so you know, every car show I'm going to be going with the hood up now. But all in all, it's done. Looks good. Go ahead and fire your car up. Make sure that your MAF sensors are all plugged in. You don't have any issues there. Fire your car up. Make sure you don't have any warnings, which you shouldn't. And you're good to go. So go ahead and put your tools away. All right, y'all, all done. As you can tell, really easy. Go ahead and clean up, put your tools away. Make sure to fire your car up. Make sure you don't have any errors or anything, which you shouldn't, but in case you missed plugging in a MAF sensor or something similar, right? So all in all, as you can tell, the install, it really isn't that hard. It just takes a little bit of time, and the passenger side takes a little bit of extra as you have to work it and fiddle it in. And in my case, with the catch can, I had to make a little bit of a modification, but you may or may not have to do that. But all in all, really simple. I'm really excited to have this in my car. I'm really excited to be able to drive around, see how this makes some changes in not only how my car sounds, but a little bit of performance. If you check out Armaspeed's website, they ran their car through a dyno with this on, and they got a little bit of performance out of it. So you're gonna get a whole lot of looks, a little bit of reduction in weight, maybe a little bit of increase in power, and a really cool upgrade to your car. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to Armaspeed. What a fantastic company. Make sure to check it out. All the links for everything you've needed today are in the video description below. Please click subscribe and the little alarm bell. It makes a huge difference to my channel. I look forward to seeing you on my next video.